WSIC. News. Talk. Now.
Well, good afternoon, Lake Norman, and welcome to Town Talk. We're coming to you live from WSIC, the Real Talk studio, nestled on the banks of beautiful Lake Norman, streaming worldwide from Paris, France, to Irmo, South Carolina. I'm Bill Russell, your host. I'm the president of Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce, the largest chamber of commerce in the greater Charlotte region. This is a program where we discuss topics that are impacting your business, your friends, your families, your neighbor, from your business and your neighborhood to mine. My guests today are Elyse Dashew. She's the chair of the Charlottte Mecklenburg Board of Education. Melissa Easley. She's also on the Charlottte Mecklenburg Board of Education District 1. And Dr. Crystal Hill. She's the new superintendent of Charlottte Mecklenburg Schools. But before we actually get into our focus on education, Bill on the boards, who's my producer. Bill, an exciting thing coming up tomorrow at noon at DBAT batting facility.
I mean, I can't believe the day has arrived.
Ladies, tomorrow we are squaring off with the station owner, general manager, Justin. He made a comment here in the studio one day that baseball was boring. Matter of fact, I think he said it again
one
today.
Day. Yeah, one day.
I think he actually
every
said
morning. Yeah.
He said it, and he said you just stand out in the outfield and you could eat snow cones. So he was dissing baseball, America's pastime. So I actually challenged him to a hitting competition at DBAT batting facility in Huntersville. The runner-up or the loser of the batting competition will be washing dishes at the Angels and Sparrows Community Kitchen. So that's coming up tomorrow at noon. Either one, y'all baseball fans? I think you're.
I am. I'm a born and raised Chicagoan. So my kind of town, we had two teams. One is great. One is not so great. My team, the White Sox. Born and raised. We don't talk about the other team. Those Cubs over there. We don't talk about that north side. We take the south side. My husband grew up so close to St. Louis, and so he's a Cardinals fan, and so we were always watching baseball growing up. Like, that was one of the things I did.
And Elyse, you said your husband liked baseball.
Well, no, but I'm a washing dishes fan.
My husband likes baseball.
Oh, your husband likes baseball.
Yes.
Okay, that's what it was. Does he
Yes.
follow a particular team?
Yeah, but I don't know what it is. He actually tried out for a minor league, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I found that out after we were married for about 5 years.
Sounds like you have a ringer, Bill.
Maybe I should bring. Yeah, sure. I'm a huge My dad was a Yankees fan, so I pull for the Yankees, but also pull for the Braves. So those are the two teams that I pull for locally. And last week we had two teams in here that were the state championship teams for Huntersville. They won the Little League Baseball Championship, 8 to 10-year-olds, and two state championship teams from the same town. So
That's amazing.
That was really cool.
That's awesome.
844 Studio 4. 844 Studio 4 is our number. We're going to be talking about education. We're going to get to the bond package that we have in the next segment. We have a $2.5 million bond package up. On Monday night, the board of directors of the Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce voted to support that bond package, and we're going to get into the particulars of that. But first, I want to talk about you, Crystal. We had a superintendent search. We created a committee that did a national search. Matter of fact, they came to the Chamber of Commerce. Melissa, you were there, and we got support. We were asking some of the community members, the elected officials, the business people, what they were looking for in terms of a superintendent. And kind of took that feedback and brought it back to the CMS board. I think, Crystal, you were hired in May.
Yes, that's correct.
My question, first to Elyse, when did you know that you had your superintendent, and what was the qualities that you saw that you said, that's her, that's what we want, that one?
So we were very blessed to have a really rich pool in this search. And there's a ton of superintendent turnover in the country right now. It is a tough job, and the pandemic made it a lot harder. And yet, we were one of the hottest searches in the country for whatever reason. We had 19 sitting superintendents of some very successful large urban districts apply for the job. Our search profile was written with feedback from groups like you guys as far as what the community was looking for. What are the community's values? What are they looking for in their school district? And we used that to put together a profile and tied that. The search was very much driven by data. Like, what is it going to take to bring our students from where they are today to being potentially the greatest in the nation? And so we were looking for superintendents that had the track record that could show that they could close gaps and increase academic performance at a dramatic rate. And it was a very, very tough choice. It was a very tough choice. And when you really sorted out all the data, we had one candidate who very clearly was the right match for what the community was looking for, and that was Dr. Crystal Hill. And thank goodness she said yes.
And Melissa, you were our representative for District 1. When did you know that this was the one I'm getting behind?
Well, I'm going to kind of echo what Chair Dashew said, is that, we had a really rich background, but honestly, it was some of the things that Crystal said in her interview that really struck me. And as a former educator and an educator in CMS, I spent a decade in CMS, some of the things that she said that she wanted to do and that she wanted to change the culture, and she, things that she had already thought of being our interim and being our chief of staff, so already saw that she could do, really inspired me, and wanting to change the culture for teachers and wanting to understood what I meant when I said, the culture of teaching has to change, and we need someone that can lead that culture of teaching, because we want our teachers to not only be, here, but we want them to want to be here. And so there were several things that she said that just clicked for me, and also said several things that I think I've told her before that I used to say as a teacher. And so it was kind of like, oh, well, I guess somebody else says that. Okay, well, kind of cool. So it was really, I'm really excited. I was thrilled to, have that vote to vote her in. I was thrilled to hear her views and her visions of what CMS could possibly be. And I look forward to many years with her.
Dr. Hill, we have the second largest district in the state and the 17th largest in the country. I was sharing with Elyse, I got here in 1996, and Dr. Eric Smith was our superintendent. And during that time, there has been 8 superintendents, including you, 3 interims. Hugh did that twice, so but a lot of churn sometimes in our leadership. It was something that we had 19 other candidates across the country looking at. You were already on board as the chief of staff, though. Why did you want to lead Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools?
Well, I didn't know that I wanted to. In fact, when I came to Charlotte, I was looking to leave public education.
Oh, really?
I had applied for multiple jobs and actually just came to Charlotte because I needed to do something different. And so after I got here, really excited to work with Hugh. He was amazing to work with. And then when I found out that he was leaving and there was time, somebody needed to step up to be the interim, I really was invested in the work that we were doing here. So I stepped up. Even at that time, I was thinking in my head, I wonder who's going to do this. I know it's going to be, I would have to be serving the next superintendent, which is why I took the role as interim so seriously, because I wanted to do the right thing. And then after I got in it, I thought, I kind of like this job, and I kind of like these 9 people that I'm working with. And but I went back and forth and read the profile and thought, I think I can do this. I think I'm going to go for it. And I decided at the very last minute, looked at my husband and my girls, about 2 a.m. the day it was due, hit submit.
Well, we're excited to have you. When we come back, we're going to talk about the bond package and the specifics for North Mecklenburg. So come back with us on Town Talk in just a minute on WSIC.
All right, can't.
Those of you who are with us streaming on Facebook Live, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, or which is now X. I don't know that I'm really comfortable now with the name. It's kind of like Prince when he came out and he had a
Formerly
symbol.
known as Prince.
How do you pronounce the symbol thing? Now it's X.
It's so
I noticed
awkward.
that all of the publications have X, comma, formerly known as Twitter, comma.
What do you say? I'm tweeting or I'm Xing?
I'm Xing.
I'm
I know.
Xing. It doesn't sound right.
Well, anyway, we're streaming live on X as well, but and on the WSIC website channel. So those of you who are with us, thank you for joining us. I want to remind people that on Tuesday, October the 10th, we have our Chamber's Business Expo. It is the largest business-to-business trade show in the Charlotte region. We'll have it at the Huntersville Recreation Center. It's going to be 11 o'clock to 5 o'clock. It's Lake Norman's show and tell. I got a lot in trouble when I was in grade school with show and tell, because we had a show and tell like in second or third grade. And my mother had made this baby book, and she had all of my stuff in it, all my pictures, locks of hair, and everything. And when they said for show and tell, you could bring out somebody or something for show and tell, I brought me. So I took all the stuff out of the baby book, and I took it to the thing, and they didn't get back in the baby book. And my mother was not ever really happy about that.
No.
But it is Lake Norman's show and tell. We got that coming up Tuesday, October the 10th. We're going to have a presence by Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools. We're going to have a booth there to promote the bond package, and really an informational booth. People can stop by, find out a little bit more about what's going on.
Anything from CMS will be informational.
Well, there you go. That's right. You guys can't endorse or support the bonds, but you'll have information about the bonds.
Yes, yeah. And the board, and Melissa and I we can promote, we can endorse, and we're working with the Regional Business Alliance, as well as with you guys. They've also been very supportive, and so they've put together a great team of volunteers to help get the word out too.
We also have the candidate forums taking place up here. So 2 days after the expo, October the 12th, Town of Cornelius, we're going to have a forum from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock at the Cornelius Town Hall. And Justin Kazepis, who is the station owner and manager here, he is going to be our MC of that particular event. We're going back live in about 10 seconds. So all of you who are streaming with us, we're going back live on Town Talk.
57. This is your weather update from the WSIC Weather Center.
It's Town Talk with Lake Norman Chamber President Bill Russell on the new 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
Welcome back to Town Talk. I'm your host, Bill Russell. My guest today is Elyse Dashew. She is the chair of the Mecklenburg Board of Education. Melissa Easley, who is on the Board of Education, District 1, representing us here in North Mecklenburg. Crystal Hill, the new superintendent of Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools. And Dennis LaCaria is actually here as well. He's from Charlotte Mecklenburg, and he'll be able to answer some specific questions. Okay, we're going to talk about the bond package. Again, $2.5 million, or just south of that, on the bonds for this fall. North Mecklenburg, what schools are we getting in North Mecklenburg?
You all are getting a lot of schools in this package, and it's long overdue. So you have North Mech, built, as I'm sure your listeners don't need to hear this, but built in 1951 when Harry Truman was president, due to be replaced. So you will get a brand new high school, new state-of-the-art athletic facilities, all the latest security features. So that's the big one. But also Cornelius Elementary is very due for a replacement. So that's going to be replaced. Huntersville Elementary will be replaced. And Bailey Middle School has, it's one of the bigger middle schools in the state, quite overcrowded. So we're going to be able to build a relief middle school to relieve Bailey Middle, which will also take some pressure off of Davidson.
Question, and without getting too complicated, how do you replace a school like Cornelius Elementary, North Mecklenburg High School, Huntersville Elementary, without displacing the students or impacting the ongoing education of the students there?
Very carefully. The logistics are mind-boggling, and we're really good at doing that. So we just did it with West Charlotte in the last bond cycle. Same sort of a situation where you build the new high school on the other side of the property, and then you take down the old high school, and then you put in the parking and all the other stuff once the old high school comes down. But it is the logistics have to be very carefully planned, because you're trying to do it. You can't be disrupting the academic year while you're doing it. And so you can't be building things and tearing things down while kids are in the classroom. So scheduling is complex to a degree that I think the layperson would just be amazed at if they could see what goes into it.
We were talking in the last segment, the baseball competition. So athletics is almost as important to me as academics. I'm assuming, though, when you're talking about taking part of the property that the school sits on, that has to impact maybe the athletic program, because that might is that taking away from the parking? Is it taking away from the ball fields when you build on the property?
Well, ultimately, it will be a vast improvement to the athletic facilities. And I know that what we saw with West Charlotte, the facilities were done when the school was ready to open, but we did not have room for everybody to park safely for their first football season. So their first year of being in the new school, they did play football games away that first year. And then over the summer, they were able to finish out, take down the old building, build out the parking, and then there was room. And so this is the first year that they've been able to have those glorious homecoming football games on campus. So it might be something like that with North Meck that first year.
You know, Dennis, I know something that you said in the presentation you did for us on YouTube was the safety of the students. And it is so much different in school than when I went to school. I started in 1966, you know, in grade school. And there was never a thought to safety. I mean, that just wasn't something
Maybe
that came up.
nuclear fallout shelters or the
Maybe.
nuclear drills under the desks.
Yeah. And then in 1977 is when I graduated from high school. So again, we didn't have some of the concerns that we have in 2023. Now there are vast protocols, procedures to, you know, you just don't walk through the front door anymore of any school. Talk about the safety features being built into these schools.
Do you want me to take that? Or
I can do it.
Whoever.
I can do it.
Go ahead.
We just did this. So there'll be a lot of things that are going in. We're getting state-of-the-art cameras. One of the big things that we keep, we're mentioning is these vestibules. So when a parent gets, every one that comes to the front door has to get buzzed in. You know, nobody can just open the door and walk in. But when you get buzzed in, you're going to go to this vestibule. And this vestibule will have, glass, and someone will, be on the other side of glass, and you can, hey, I'm dropping my lunch off, or I'm meeting with this person. And if you're just dropping your lunch off, you send it through, and then you go out the door. You never actually step foot in the school. So we're doing things like that. We're making sure that all of our buildings lock from the outside. Right now, if you're a teacher in CMS, you have a badge, and your badge opens your outside doors. And so we'll continue with that. We'll be having state-of-the-art cameras and security systems, and as much as we can to keep our kids safe. Big thing about North Meck is that right now it's an open campus, and that was a big thing in the 70s and 80s. Is you wanted this college feel, this open campus, being outside, and we can no longer do that, making sure our kids are safe. So North Meck will be one building, so that once you're in the building, you are in the building and you are surrounded by all the safety protocols.
I know when you're building new schools or making improvements to existing schools, there's things you can build in. What procedures are taking place to protect the kids today in some of the older schools, Dr. Hill?
Well, one of the things that Ms. Easley mentioned is an upgrade to our camera system. That's one of the things that we've taken in consideration. In some of our schools, we've also added those safety vestibules that Melissa spoke about, and then also the card access reader in order to get in and out. The other thing that we've done is just coordinated real closely with some of our schools that currently have those open campuses until we get them fixed, like North Meck, safety protocols that we can do just to make sure that our kids are safe since they're traveling back and forth between buildings.
You know, I know another thing that has to weigh on your mind is the older schools. When I was growing up, and by the way, Charlie Jeter just texted me and said, 1977, I'm old. I would remind Charlie he's just about as old as I am, so he's right there with me.
I was born in 1977.
Oh, no. Okay, maybe I am old. All right. There, I admit that. But one of the things that I remember was the 2 years that I didn't really do good in school was in fourth grade, we went to West End School, which was an old school. Matter of fact, it had the boilers and the pipes that clanged, it was just an old school. And then Sullivan Junior High was actually the former Rock Hill High School that my grandfather had gone to. And so it was a really worn down school. And those 2 years, I really didn't do well. So sometimes your environment can breed whether or not you're going to be successful in school. Can you speak to that?
Sure. I could speak to the HVAC issues, right? If you're extremely hot and you're sweaty, you can't learn very well. If you have a blower over your head, it's really noisy. You can't hear very well. We have schools that flood. The other thing, in a lot of our schools, it was that open classroom concept. So you have the particle boards that now are partitioned. So you have the sound issues going back and forth. So there's lots of things that impact student and learning. Lack of daylight is huge, right? So if you're in a classroom where there's not any daylight, or you're in a closet, things like that, it's just very difficult to teach and also difficult to learn. So we definitely want to enhance the teaching and learning environment.
And she did say if you're in a closet, like in some of our schools that are really crowded, we've turned closets into teaching and learning spaces.
Sure.
And I can, as a teacher, I was a science and social studies teacher, so we were always the internal classrooms because we had the sinks and things like that. From like November to January, I don't think I ever saw daylight because we had no windows, there were no outside doors, and by the time I got to school, it was still dark. And by the time I left school, it was dark again. So, I mean, that really affected, especially when you're trying to teach weather. Well, look outside. Oh, wait, no, hold on. Okay, let's go down the stairs and let's go look outside and let's see what kind of things we're doing. So I'm really excited that environment was really taken into account on this bond, and the environment of our schools. You mentioned boiler rooms and bomb shelters, and we have schools in CMS that have that, that are on this bond to be replaced for those reasons. We have schools where our teachers have to wear microphones because the HVAC system is so loud that our kids can't hear. And so I'm really, really excited as a former educator that this environment was really taken into account, and we're really looking at how to improve the environment of our schools.
I know that there is a website that people can go to for information specifically on the bond campaign. Where can we direct people to look?
So for anyone who wants to get involved and help volunteer and get a yard sign and all of that sort of thing, it's voteyesforbonds.com. And then also on the CMS website, we have a huge amount of information. So we have first of all, if anybody wants to see every single detail about the previous bond, like if you want to hold us accountable for how we are spending those precious taxpayer dollars, which I encourage everybody to hold us accountable for, go to cmsbondconstruction.com, and there you can see projects down to the hour with their updates on, this school is 80% finished, and here are the bulldozers that are driving through the campus today. And every penny that was spent on that. And then the list of all the projects, you can see site lists of every single school on the 2023 bond, and that website is
charmexschools.org/bond.
Thank you.
Elyse, what are the tax implications for this particular bond to somebody, all of us living in Mecklenburg County? What's the tax implication for me as a resident?
Yeah, there is going to be a bit of a tax implication on this one, and it is basically a total of 3 cents, an increase of 3 cents. And what the county economists, or that's what they've projected, the county economists have projected that they will increase taxes by 1 cent in 2025, and then again in 28, and then again in 29. So if you have a $400,000 house, which is the median price of a house these days, which blows me away, it sounds like a lot of money to me, that would be $40 a year in 2025, another 40 in 2028, another 40 in 2029. So it adds up to about 120.
Which is, I just want to add, that's less than getting 2 Starbucks coffees a month.
It's a pretty good deal.
Or price of a Big Mac.
That's right.
There you go. There you go. We're going to go to break in just a little while. For those of you streaming, stay on. We're going to be talking about some Chamber of Commerce activities. And those of you out there on Radio Land, please come back to us on Town Talk at WSIC here with Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools. We were talking just before we went to break about the candidate forums that we had, and I said that the Cornelius Forum is going to be October the 12th, 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock at Cornelius Town Hall. We're going to have the 2 people running for mayor and the 10 candidates that are running for town board. We're going to have 2 forums in Huntersville because Huntersville is so special. No, actually, we have 3 people running for mayor, 16 people running for town board. So we really had to look at 2 different forums to be able to get them all in. So we're going to have a forum on the 17th for the town of Huntersville, and the 19th, which is on Thursday, for the balance. What we're going to do is have our 3 mayoral candidates on that Tuesday with 5 of the commissioner candidates, and then 11 candidates in 2 different fields on that following Thursday. Again, 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock at the Huntersville Town Hall. People have asked, are we going to be streaming that? Is it on Facebook? Absolutely. WSIC is our partner on that. They will be streaming on their platforms. It'll be on Facebook. It'll be on their website. It'll be on Truth. It'll be on LinkedIn, Twitter, X. So we'll have that available for folks to be able to watch. And then Town of Davidson pretty much called off their elections because they have 5 people running for town board, 5 people running for 5 slots, 1 person running for mayor. So unless there's a heck of a write-in candidate, that one's done. So we're going to have a meet and greet at the Davidson Village Inn on October the 30th. So it'll be a chance for folks to meet some of their candidates. We'll also have anyone who's running for any other position. I think we don't have a school board.
We
We
do.
do.
We have at-large.
We do have
At-large
at-large.
school board. So the at-large candidates could come and introduce themselves, and they would be provided an opportunity to say a minute or 2 about themselves. So we'll have that available for them. But that's the candidate forums. And then on the 19th, we're having a public safety luncheon. Each year for 20 years, this is going to be the 20th year of this, we recognize the outstanding police and fire officer from the towns of Cornelius, Davidson, and Huntersville that have been nominated by their respective departments. So we recognize our outstanding police and fire, but also our Crime Stoppers of the Year. And that's coming up on October the 19th. So a lot going on. Looking forward to you participating in the Business Expo on October the 10th. We'll have a booth that we hand out information on Charlottte Mecklenburg School Bond, and look forward to that particular thing as well. We have about 30 seconds before we go live. All of you who are streaming with us, thank you for joining us, and we're going to go back and talk a little bit more about the bond campaign in just a second. Thank you for being with us.
The Community Yard Sale. Sell your stuff October 28th as we bring back the legendary Community Yard Sale. Visit WSICnews.com/yard sale. Get your spot today.
Call now to speak with Lake Norman Chamber President Bill Russell at 844-STUDIO-4. It's Town Talk on WSIC.
Welcome back to Town Talk. I'm Bill Russell, your host. My guest today are Elyse Dashew. She's the chair of the Charlottte Mecklenburg Board of Education. Melissa Easley, she's with the Charlottte Mecklenburg Board of Education District 1, representing us up here in Cornelius, Davidson, and Huntersville. And Dr. Crystal Hill, Superintendent, Charlottte Mecklenburg Schools, been on board since May in this particular position, but you were the chief of staff before. How long have you been with Charlottte Mecklenburg Schools?
A little over a year. My first day was May 10th of 2022.
And I think you were over in the Cabarrus school system for a while before that. And I think, weren't you the assistant superintendent?
Yes, so I was the assistant superintendent and then same position, but title change, chief academic officer in Cabarrus County. And then prior to that, I was right down the road in Mooresville, graded school district.
And in that tenure, didn't the academic achievement wasn't it higher than it had ever been for Cabarrus?
Yes, it is. We had our absolute highest academic achievement during the time I was there. Yes.
And what was the change? What do you think that you and the superintendent put in place that made that change?
Sure. Well, we had a real strong culture shift, and we talked about raising the bar, that everything that we needed to do was about students and raising the bar to make sure that our kids had access to whatever they wanted to do when they graduated. And we knew that we could only do that through clarity of expectations and then taking a real hard look at what we're expected to teach, which is the North Carolina Standard Course of Study, measuring that often, taking a look at it and reviewing it so we can make changes along the way, and just saw huge gains.
And Crystal, WSIC, we air from Statesville down to Huntersville, and I think you also served time in Statesville. The Statesville system?
I was in Mooresville.
Mooresville
Mooresville
system.
Graded School
Okay.
District. Yes.
And what did you do in the Iredell system?
I was a principal, actually, principal at Parkview Elementary and Rocky River Elementary, and then I moved on to be the executive director of elementary education and federal programs.
And how many students were involved in those schools?
Oh, and the total district was about 15,000 kids, so much smaller than
So-
Charlotte Mecklenburg schools.
So most of your education has been right here in our region?
Yes, it has. Yes, and previous to that, I was in Guilford County.
Okay. At least going back to the 2017 bond, $920 million, that was a bond at our Chamber of Commerce. We came out in opposition. I think we were the only organized group in opposition to it, but largely because at that time I don't think there was hardly any monies coming from North Mecklenburg at that time. I think there were some monies for Davidson at that point, but not a lot.
Yeah, not a lot. That was, at that time, I think we had about $2 billion worth of need throughout the district, and we had the bond that was just under $1 billion, and so there was so much need that we couldn't meet. And so we're always playing catch up. I think, even with this bond, we're hitting 30, we've got 30 projects impacting 35 schools. We had 125 schools on the list. If you look at our whole 10-year capital plan, so this was the most that we felt that we could responsibly ask the taxpayers for. But there is a lot more need. So we just, we do what we can. We stretch those dollars as far as they will go. And at this point in time, it was definitely due. We were, the schools up here were very, very due to be replaced or relieved. And then there are other parts of the county now saying, but what about us?
Sure. I was sharing before we actually started the program that my role is to carry out the wishes of the board of directors. So and that's same thing with Crystal. She answers to the board of directors. And I remember when we were going into that campaign, I said, well, either we can vote to support it, or we can just not say anything and just abstain from it. And I said, but you don't want to come out in opposition to it because that looks like you're against education. And the board said, no, we're going to come out in opposition because we want to send a message. And I don't know that I necessarily agreed with that, but that's the stand that they took in 2017. But obviously, the voice was heard this time around because we're getting some significant improvements and replacements to our schools. As our board representative, how does that make you feel to know that this time we are getting a good amount of money coming to North Mecklenburg?
I'm really excited. When I first got on the board, I'm newer to the North Mech area, and so I was learning and listening to people and talking about it. I think my first meeting with Dennis Zakari, I said, okay, what are we doing for North Mech? What's on the bond? And that's before any of the projects were released, or we were talking. It was my very first meeting. We met at Waterbean Coffee, if I remember correctly, and he said, no, North Mech will be on the bond. And I said, okay, I want to make sure about these 4 schools. He says, those are the 4 schools that are going to be on the bond. So I was really, really excited and really happy, and wanted to make sure that, North Mech up here received what they needed. And like Chair Dashew said, and we've said several times, these 3 schools that are being replaced are beyond overdue.
Right.
We're rounding almost 100 years old with several of them. And, we've done all of the things that we can do to fix them. They can no longer be fixed. And so I'm very, very excited. And whenever I'm asked about it, I'm like, yeah, we got 4 schools coming up here. And I actually call it 4.5. Because we're actually getting an IB program up here, which has been something that I have heard from the community is wanted and needed. And so J.M. Alexander, once the new middle school is built, J.M. Alexander will become a full IB program. And so we're going to have a magnet program up here, which we have not had, and people have been asking for. So I'm also excited about that project as well. And also, that's where my children go to school. My children are at Blythe right now. So, and my son will definitely end up in the IB program, I think. So I'm very, very excited about that.
Elyse, what is the status of the 2017 bonds? I mean, are we about done with those, or what's the status on that?
We're winding them up. So the county plans for us to spend about 7 years to build out the schools. They distribute the funds over 7 years. So a lot of people think when you pass a $2.5 billion bond, then the next day after the election, you get a check for $2.5 billion. And it doesn't work that way. So the county they release a certain amount at a time, and so even if you've got 5 years between the bonds, you usually spend about 7 years building the building. So you start gradually, you ramp up. So in the middle of the bond cycle, you're doing a ton of construction, and then it tapers back down. So we're on that tapering down, almost done with the 2017 bond, and it'll be tapering down when the 2023, if it passes, please voters, will be tapering back up. That's like the most efficient way to do things. That keeps the contractors going, and you don't have people stop and get out of work and disband their businesses. It just sort of keeps things flowing along at a steady pace.
I don't recall by how great it passed. I was thinking it was like close to 70% or more.
It was in
do
the
you remember?
70s. It was in the 70s. It passed pretty solidly. Yeah.
Question, and again, we hope this isn't the case, but what if this particular bond failed?
Not good.
We don't want to think about that.
Not good. No, so the need will still be there. It will be more expensive to address the need. The county has ways to fund building schools other than bonds. It's just that bonds are the most cost-efficient way to do it. It's almost like the lowest interest mortgage or the lowest interest credit card. Like you want to buy things on the lowest interest credit card, not the highest interest credit card. So there are more expensive ways to finance building schools. And if it's desperate enough, they'll do that. But it'll cost us more, and we won't get as much bang for the buck.
844 Studio 4 if you wanted to call in. I don't think this bond is really acquiring any land. I think this is already building on existing land. What do we do in terms of planning for the future? Do our towns, do our developers, is the business community, who's responsible for really making sure that we have the land to build future schools?
That's a really good question. And of course, as a school district, we don't approve the permits and we don't do the zoning. That's up to the towns and the municipalities. And then we don't control the rate of the funding. That's up to the county. So you do kind of get this impasse sometimes where the different bodies of government are not working together as strategically as we could. However, I mean, we do know there's, 115 people a day moving to Mecklenburg County, and you got to make room for all those people to live and work. So we have to be very strategic on our side to use that precious land as efficiently as we can. And so we've changed as time goes by. We change the way our schools look. We're doing more multi-story schools now. There will come a time where some of our high schools, like we may need to start building middle schools on a high school campus, and then the high schools may start using regional athletic facilities years down the road. This is nowhere near, but when you think 10, 20, 30 years down the road, we're starting to envision models like that.
Dr. Hill, she just talked about the growth, and I talked about the change of CMS over my tenure of almost 30 years here. When I moved here in 1996, the community of Huntersville, we were probably right at under 10,000 people. Today we're approaching 70,000 people. That's just in the one town of Huntersville. Tremendous growth throughout North Mecklenburg that we're seeing. A question I have, and a big concern I've had, is during the COVID years, going back to 2020 and 2021, when we didn't have activities going on at school, it was at-home learning. The concern I have is that certainly for me, and we'll talk about this when we come back from the break, but the concern for me was when I was 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, those were very formative years where a lot of social interaction took place. And it took place around the schools. I mean, you had a lot of school activities, and you went to school and saw your friends, and then you maybe aligned your dates, and you went out to all your activities. And we didn't do that with the kids. They didn't have their proms. They didn't have things they went to. They didn't have the interaction at schools. And I'm really concerned of what we're going to find, not this year, next year, or the year after, but how's that impacting those kids that are coming out of the schools, and how it's going to impact them 10 years or 20 years from now by what happened with COVID. I want to get into a little bit of that. I want to see if y'all have answers for that, along with your favorite subjects when we come back on Town Talk, right here on Town Talk WSIC. Please stay with us. I can't even imagine, again, I think about 17 and 18 going to junior, senior, going to the dances and all the things that, you went to school and you lined up what you're going to do for Saturday night or Friday night. And those kids couldn't do that. You didn't have football games to go to. You didn't have any of that. But I want to talk about that when we get back from our break. I want to remind people that tomorrow night, the Chamber of Commerce is having its business after hours. We'll be at United Community Bank. That's Thursday. The 28th, it's going to be 5:30 to 7, United Community Bank right here in Cornelius. So it's a chance for businesses to come out and network. Please encourage you to do so. If you're not a member of the Chamber, come out and see what we do. Do you have a chance to get to any of the networking events? Maybe the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance or the Charlotte Chamber, the old Charlotte Chamber has any activities that you go to like that networking?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just so important to be out in the community and connecting with our partners, and we're a stronger school system for being in tune with our partners.
I mean, just me learning even more learning the area. As Chair Dashew knows, my favorite stop is Davidson Farmers Market on Saturday mornings, and I'm out there talking to people and meeting people and just showing my face and having these discussions. I've had some great discussions just walking up and down the farmers market, and so it's one of my favorite things to do on a Saturday. And as I find out more about these different networking, I look forward to meeting more people and getting out there and networking with everybody.
Well, we have a lot of networking events at the Chamber of Commerce, and again, I encourage you, if you get an opportunity, please come on out.
I was going to say, Melissa makes friends everywhere she goes.
Yeah, she does.
The other thing that we are having tomorrow is we're having a reception at the Chamber at 4:30 for our Junior Leadership Lake Norman. And Crystal, I don't know how much you know about that, but we have a Leadership Lake Norman. It's been going on for since 1997, an adult program, and then we created about 10 years ago, I think this is the 12th class now, of Junior Leadership Lake Norman, which is a chance for them to go out and they learn about health care. They go to the atrium and Novant. They find out about their town halls and the governance. They find out the history, go to Davidson College, economic development. They'll tour Southwire. So it exposes these students. We've got students from Huff High School participating. We've had students in the past from Hopewell High School, but great program. All right, we're going back. Those of you who are streaming live, we're going back to on the radio in just a minute, but thank you for streaming with us.
Collaborate with our experts. Drum Landscape Supply, your local one-stop landscape shop.
Call now to speak with Lake Norman Chamber President Bill Russell at 844-STUDIO-4. It's Town Talk on WSIC.
Well, welcome back to Town Talk. I'm Bill Russell. I have Elyse Dashew. She's the chair of CMS. We have Melissa Easley. She's our District 1 representative. And Dr. Crystal Hill, she's our new superintendent. And Dennis Lacaria, who's sitting in the corner, going to correct any of us if we get it wrong. Dennis is the guy that's got all the numbers. I have now heard him do a presentation for the Chamber's board, and also when there was a YouTube presentation that we have, and he is a wealth of information. So thank you for joining us, Dennis. Before we went to break, we were talking about the impacts of COVID and how it might impact the generation of kids that came through a couple of years ago. What are your thoughts on what happened with COVID and at-home learning?
I mean, it was a global pandemic. It was history. We lived through history. Those of us who survived it survived history. And so I try to look at it through a historic lens, kind of like I look at the greatest generation that went through the Great Depression. They went through World War II. I think that's what this generation is. And so these students are incredibly resilient. They know that if they could get through that, they can get through anything. And yes, socially, it was devastating for the kids, but for adults too. I mean, I think adults are still trying to learn how to get along well again and how to be civil with each other. And little by little, we're kind of getting back to normal, but it's not just the kids. It had a huge impact on the psychology of the adults too.
Dr. Hill, you were the chief of staff at the time, right, during that period of time. How did it impact the teachers? Because it wasn't just the students that were impacted. How did it impact the teachers?
Yes, it was extremely difficult. I was actually in Cabarrus County Schools at the time during the COVID time, but extremely difficult because, of course, our teachers had to teach And then they were also responsible for their children at home. So they had to do their job while also caring for their children at home. And so the planning, all the wonderful things that teachers do in terms of collaboration, of course, became extremely difficult. So they had to just be extremely creative in trying to figure out how to do that.
And were you a teacher at
I
the
was
time?
teaching in CMS at the time. Yeah,
you were a
absolutely.
science teacher.
I
right?
was. I was science and social studies. I was teaching 8th grade at the time. And my master's degree is in online teaching and learning. So honestly, when the pandemic hit and we went virtual, my class didn't miss a beat. We just kept going because I had all the virtual things set up already and that we've been doing during the classroom. So, but it was definitely a different take. You know, I miss seeing my kids every day. I love creating those connections with them, and so even just seeing them on Zoom. But we kept going, and honestly, you know, as Chair Dashew and I had my kids at home. My kids were, I had one that hadn't started school yet, and one that was in 1st grade. So I was trying to help my 1st grader and trying to, you know, handle my younger one and teach at the same time, and they became part of my lesson. Like we went with the flow and we had a good time. And, you know, I offered extra credit one day and we watched Hamilton and, you know, we got creative. My kids were young once again, and we used to do online board games. So them and their friend would have the same board game and they'd play with each other, but they would move the pieces on their own. So, and we watched movies, and we got real creative on how to enjoy each other's company without being in person. So it took a lot of creative and a lot of extra work, but you know, we all made through. And my daughter's doing well now, and my son is kicking off. You know, he had kindergarten was virtual, but 1st grade was ready to go, and they both love school. And we're, as Chair Dashew said, we're all getting back into society still, and you know, learning how to be everyday people again. And to me, it's great because I love that conversation. I love talking to people and getting out there and seeing what are going on in the community. So I'm really happy that things are starting to, you know, really open up again and be back to pre-pandemic times.
We throw around a lot of terms that some people may not have their hands around, and you mentioned a while ago IB. You talked about the IB school, magnet schools. What's the difference between an IB and a magnet, or is it the same?
I'm going to let Dr. Hill speak to that.
Sure. So IB is one of our magnet programs, but IB stands for International Baccalaureate School, and it's actually an extremely prestigious program. It focuses on critical thinking, approaching very complex problems through an international mindset. I love IB because it has a great balance between academics, but then also the arts and things like that. Heavy emphasis on world language. And those that graduate with an IB diploma, it is the most prestigious diploma you can graduate with.
So IB is a component of a magnet school. Are there challenges or limitations to a magnet school?
Yes, so to implement IB, for example, it's extremely expensive because of the training, the materials that are required. It's just very expensive, and you also have to, you can't just say I want to be an IB school. You're accredited through the IB program. So that is extremely expensive. And of course, you have to recoup those costs whenever you have new staff that come on, new leadership, things like that. But the benefits definitely outweigh the challenges. And one of the things that we really want to do that will be supported with this bond is really take a look at our most popular magnet programs and make sure that there's access in all areas of the county. So we're not putting the stressors on families and our transportation system by transferring students across the county. Instead, selecting our most popular programs and making sure that there's equitable access in different parts of town.
And we have our science teacher here, so maybe this is one that you're going to field. STEM education. What does a STEM education classroom look like?
Oh man. Well, in a perfect world, you'd have that open classroom idea where you've got different things going on. You've got areas that have technology, you've got areas that have art, science, and math, and you're kind of putting them all together. One of the schools I taught at was a STEM school. It was one of our magnet programs, and it was a STEM magnet. And we had all sorts of fun technology, robots, so they could build robots, and they could do they could go into our library media center, and they could do 3D printing, and they could make circuits and all sorts of things. Actually, one of our schools won an award because there was a child in a wheelchair, and they needed a way to carry her oxygen on the wheelchair, and there was no way to do that. And so our sixth graders worked through problem solving to come up with a brand new wheelchair device so that they could hold her oxygen and some other things. And they did it, they made it, and they put it on, and it was incredible to watch. And these were 12, 13, 14-year-olds that just came up with this idea that they wanted to help. And so a STEM education is not just the books and the learning, it's applying that to real life situations. And that was something that I was always really big on and hands-on. When I was in this classroom, Novant Health had their pathology department allowed teachers to bring in organs. And so I would go and pick up a box of organs, and during our health and science unit in our human body, we could actually pick up a brain and see what that looked like. And we held a heart and all of those things. And it was those experiences that really bring in the STEM education into the real world and open the eyes of kids that maybe they've not experienced that. I can honestly say that very few kids have held a human heart in their hand. I have a picture with me and a human brain. I think those are the experiences that we really want to bring to kids through our magnets and through our STEM education and all those things.
And remind people what STEM actually stands for.
Science, technology, engineering, and math.
There you go.
And STEAM has the art aspect of it.
There you go. I saw a term recently with Charlotte Mecklenburg schools that I was unfamiliar with, express bus stops. So tell me, what is express bus stops?
So that is we've got a lot of magnets in CMS, and we have a lot of buses in CMS. We are one of the largest bus fleets in the nation. For whatever reason, our kids need a lot of buses, and we have a lot of bus stops. And so there is a bus driver shortage right now. We're having a real hard time. And this is all over the country. It's not just us. Convincing enough people to do this job of driving a bus, getting all the proper licensure that you have to do to drive a bus for what we can afford to pay. And so we have had to figure out ways to get more efficient with basically not need as many buses. And so one of the ways to do that is to have these express stops where students, instead of having the bus that comes right to your door, you go a ways away from, you kind of have a central place where students gather and the bus picks them up there. So it's not ideal. My kids did that actually years ago during the recession. It's a little bit better now the way we've worked out the model, but it's still not ideal. When you're used to the convenience of the bus coming right to your door, it's really hard to adjust. But this is just something we've had to do. If we didn't do this, we'd be down 200 or 300 bus drivers, and God only knows how
Some
late
other
our buses
counties
would be running.
Wake County is doing an A-day, B-day bus route. So you get a bus one day, you don't get the bus the next day. You get a bus the next day after that. So we're trying very, very hard to avoid doing something like that. There's been other counties that have had to cancel school because they don't have enough bus drivers. Chicago is having this big issue right now as well. And so
Louisville, Kentucky.
I mean, this is not just a Mecklenburg thing. This is a national shortage. And so we're really trying to do the best we can to our students to make sure that they get there safely, on time, and as efficient as possible.
I had a ton of questions left. We've got less than a minute, and I haven't got to any most of the things I really wanted to ask you, but I thank you for being here today. A lot of people forget that CMS is one of the largest employers. 18,000 people, I think.
About 20,000
people.
20,000.
But I want to thank all three of you for being here, and I want to thank you for the commitment that you have. I tell people often, we have one of the best public school systems in the country, best charter school, best private schools. We have choice here, and I think that makes it outstanding, and it makes it a great business community, a great place to work, live, and visit.
Before we leave, Bill, I do want to bring out real quick.
We don't have time.
Oh,
5
okay.
seconds. So
I
we'll
was gonna say Thursday.
if it's Wednesday afternoon, you're on Town Talk. Come back and see us next week.
Thursday.
The new
We've got it.
105.9, 100.7 WSIC, Statesville, Mooresville, North Charlotte.